Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bell to Bell. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, and we got a great show for you guys today. First and foremost, Solo Sikoa is back. So what does that mean for him, and what does that mean for the Bloodline 2.0? I know they're not going by it anymore, but how else would you describe the group of Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa whenever he comes back, and of course, their former leader in Solo Sikoa. So what's next for them? We'll discuss that to lead off the show. Also, what's the plan for Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania? Because as of right now, it feels like it's going in a different direction than we might have all expected. Plus, are we about to get a dream matchup for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania? We'll discuss that as well, and then close things out with a bell-to-bell top 5. What are the top 5 heels in wrestling today? That's what we're going to close off the show with. But remember, if you like this video, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com and then at Nick Belsky, or at Bell to Bell on Spotify. Let's kick things off with the biggest news of the week. Solo Sikoa is back on television, returning on Friday Night Smackdown to attack Cody Rhodes following the main event where Rhodes and Jey Uso were able to defeat Tama Tonga and Jacob Fatu. This is only Solo's second appearance since losing to Roman Reigns on the debut of Monday Night Raw on Netflix. The first one was about a week and a half later on SmackDown. Solo came out when Jacob was already in the ring, didn't say a word, and then walked out on Jacob Fatu. There's two different directions to go here, and I want to go here first with Cody Rhodes. A lot of people are upset that Solo came back and he immediately went after Cody Rhodes. A lot of people are done with that story. A lot of people think that that's played out. Some people didn't like that story to begin with. I saw somebody call it the weakest part of Cody Rhodes' title reign to this point. And while I share some of those beliefs, I don't think that the Solo versus Cody story was all that fantastic last year going into SummerSlam, although it did lead to the big return of Roman Reigns. I don't mind the fact that Solo's going after Cody Rhodes. It is the road to WrestleMania. It's not going to be a straight line from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania with one feud for each champion. There's going to be some twists. There's going to be some turns. And I don't mind a detour for Cody Rhodes being another matchup with Solo Sikoa at Elimination Chamber. I think that is perfectly fine, because as of right now, the question is, what's next for Solo? What's next for Jacob Fatu? What are they even going to do at WrestleMania? Because I don't want to see Jacob Fatu go up against Braun Strowman. I thought he put an end to that at Saturday night's main event. It looked like Strowman was going to be written off TV. Lo and behold, Strowman comes back at the Rumble, eliminates Fatu, and we're probably going to have to deal with that for the next couple of weeks. That's one that I don't have very much interest in. But Solo versus Cody for the next couple of weeks to get us to Elimination Chamber and to get us to the point where we finally have a true number one contender at WrestleMania, yeah, that's fine. Why not? Because I think it could also start to plant the seeds that Jacob Fatu doesn't want to go after Cody Rhodes. What Jacob Fatu wants more than anything is retribution on Roman Reigns for his tribal chief, Solo Sikoa. And that all leads to the culmination of this story. Solo Sikoa versus Jacob Fatu at Mania. It just makes sense. It's what I want to see. I think it's the best spot for both of those talents, because while Jacob is being built up as a main star, he is being built up as a main event talent, he's not quite there yet. You're not going to put him in a championship match. You're not going to put him against Cody Rhodes at Mania. You're not going to put him against John Cena at Mania. But you could put Jacob Fatu versus Solo Sikoa at WrestleMania, and nobody's going to blink an eye. Not only that, those two can deliver a great story leading up to it and a great match, whether that be on WrestleMania Saturday or WrestleMania Sunday. Since the departure of Sikoa from TV the last couple of months, Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga have been absolutely wrecking shop, doing whatever they want. We already talked about the short feud that they had with Braun Strowman. Tama Tonga has been all over the place, going after certain guys, making his mark, pointing at some of the tag team titles, where he wants to get that whenever he gets his tag team partner in Tonga Loa back. But I think overall, Jacob Fatu is going to want one thing whenever he starts to reunite with Solo Sikoa. He's going to want retribution from Roman Reigns. Yeah, Solo's going after Cody because he's the one guy there, that he's the one target that they've gone for, and he is the target on SmackDown. So if Jacob Fatu is going to wreck shop, what's he going to do? He's going to go after the top guy. But I think all in all, whenever Solo and Jacob Fatu get back in a ring together or get back in a backstage together, Jacob Fatu is going to say that he wants Solo Sikoa to be the tribal chief. And it feels, it might be wrong, but it feels like Solo is going to respect the result of tribal combat and say, let Roman alone. We're going after something else. And I think that starts to turn, I love you, Solo, to I hate you, Solo. And Fatu is not going to be happy that Solo Sikoa rolled over and gave up on being the tribal chief. Like I said, Jacob's being booked like a main attraction. Tama Tonga gets Tonga Loa whenever Tonga Loa comes back, and they get to join a very good SmackDown tag team division that is doing a lot of good things. I don't know where Solo Sikoa goes from this feud. I think that leading up to Mania, this is the perfect feud for Solo. He deserves a one-on-one match because whether you like it or not, he helped carry WWE from WrestleMania to SummerSlam last year. Whether you like to admit it or not, that was one of the best stories that we got through all of last year. What's the best moment between WrestleMania and now? Top 5 has to be Solo Sikoa turning on Paul Heyman and putting him through an announce table at Madison Square Garden. The guy deserves a spot on WrestleMania in a one-on-one match, and I think it appears like Jacob Fatu is primed and ready for that same spotlight. So I don't know what happens after Mania, but I think leading into Mania, Solo versus Jacob is certainly a match that should be booked and a story that should be told. I don't know what happens after that for him. Maybe a tag team with his older brother, Jimmy Uso. But then again, I've kind of liked Jimmy's singles work since 2025 began. Since Roman said he was going to the Rumble. Since Jey Uso started to separate himself again from the Bloodline story. Jimmy's been pretty good on Friday Night SmackDown. So I don't know if I'd put him back in a tag team with Solo Sikoa, who came around to the other side after being kicked out of the Bloodline 2.0 by Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, and the eventual returning Tonga Loa. So I don't know what's next for him, but before Mania, it should be him and Jacob Fatu in a storyline. Speaking of what's next and what's the plan, what is the plan right now for Rhea Ripley? Because I thought it was one thing, and instead it feels like we're getting something else. Doesn't feel like it's going to be Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky. At the very least, not going to be that in a singles match, because Ripley and Sky will face on the Raw after Elimination Chamber. I could see if Io Sky got a title match next week and was screwed and still did the thing that I expected her to do, which was beat somebody up and just enter the Elimination Chamber and take somebody else's spot in the Elimination Chamber. But she's facing Io Sky on the March 3rd episode of Monday Night Raw after Elimination Chamber, which means that's after we get a number one contender for Rhea Ripley's Women's World Championship at WrestleMania. So there's no way that Io Sky is going to go over Rhea Ripley with the last PLE before Mania already in the rearview mirror. So that leads me to this. Who wins the Chamber? Who's going to win the Chamber match? And who makes the most sense for WrestleMania for Rhea Ripley? Is it Bayley? No, that doesn't fit. She's doing a lot of work right now with NXT talent, going up against Roxanne Perez, going up against Julia this Saturday at Vengeance Day. So it doesn't make sense for it to be Bayley. Alexa Bliss feels like that's too soon to have her go to SmackDown, win the Elimination Chamber, and then compete for a Raw Women's World Championship. Doesn't fit. Bianca Belair, that makes a little bit of sense. She's undefeated at WrestleMania. Her versus Rhea Ripley is a one-on-one match that should happen at some point on one of the big 4 pay-per-views, but it still feels like something has to give with the story between her and Jade Cargill. So maybe that feels like it's out of the picture. Raquel Rodriguez, Roxanne Perez, that's a Elimination Chamber qualifying match. Neither of them make sense. Chelsea Green versus Naomi, that's another Elimination Chamber qualifying match. That doesn't really make sense either. And you're left with one person, Liv Morgan. Again, I'm not sure anybody is interested in seeing yet another matchup between Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan one-on-one for the Women's World Championship. But in the same way that I talked about earlier, saying Solo Sikoa deserves a spot at WrestleMania in a headlining match, whether that's him versus Jacob Fatu or him versus somebody else, Solo Sikoa should be featured on WrestleMania. It feels like the same thing should be true about Liv Morgan. She was the superstar of the year in my eyes in WWE in 2024. So she deserves to get an opportunity at WrestleMania. Because if you remember, she wasn't on WrestleMania last year. She didn't have that opportunity. She didn't get that chance. This year, she deserves one of the top spots. And I think winning in the chamber would put her in line for one of those top spots. But like I mentioned, it doesn't feel like anybody, including WWE, is interested in putting Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley in another singles match, in another singles title match, where they've already run this entire rivalry, this entire feud into the ground. They just did it on the Raw debut on Netflix. They're not going to do it on WrestleMania. However, a triple threat seems a little more likely. Now, I mentioned it's Io Sky versus Rhea Ripley on the Raw After Elimination Chamber for the Women's World Championship. It feels like Io Sky is very close to going back to her damage control days, where she becomes a heel, where she becomes somebody who turns on her friends. Well, she got screwed out of the Elimination Chamber. If she gets screwed out of this match and screwed out of a WrestleMania opportunity on Monday Night Raw, whether that be via Rhea Ripley doing something, whether that be via Liv and Raquel costing Io Sky because they want to take it away from Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania, something's going to happen in that match that makes Adam Pearce put Io Sky in the matchup at WrestleMania. And instead of Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky, it feels like it's going to be Rhea Ripley versus Liv Morgan versus Io Sky in a triple threat match at WrestleMania. That's what it feels like they're going right now. Because as of last week, I said, yeah, Ripley versus Sky, it feels like that's the plan. Even though Io Sky had been screwed out of an Elimination Chamber opportunity, it felt like some way, somehow she was going to get in there. Instead, this might be a different way to do it. Again, you look down at some of the other opponents, there's not really any that makes sense for Rhea at WrestleMania. You can make the argument about Bianca, but they really haven't been setting anything up between Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair. Liv Morgan makes the most sense. She just does, to win the Elimination Chamber. And again, her, Io, and Rhea Ripley at Mania, that could tear the house down. That could be a match of the night candidate. We saw what Io and Liv Morgan were able to do yesterday in a tag match on Monday Night Raw. Imagine being given a bigger spotlight and throwing in Rhea Ripley, who's one of the best women superstars in wrestling right now. That would be a great match. And I think that that would be something that you could rival Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton with in the women's world title picture going into WrestleMania. So I hope that's what's happening. Again, I was 0 for 1 because I swung and missed on what I expected whenever I gave my predictions last week. That's what it feels like the plan is now for Rhea Ripley, is a triple threat match with Io and Liv Morgan. Speaking of WrestleMania, a couple of implications from yesterday. Are we really about to get AJ Styles versus Bron Breakker for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania? I certainly hope so, because to me, this is a dream match that I hadn't even thought of. But look at the two competitors. Look at the two in-ring talents. Look at the two just talents in general when it comes to on the mic, when it comes to telling stories. AJ made his Raw debut yesterday on Monday Night Raw. It looks like it's going to be him versus Dominic Mysterio next week, which is fine. It's great. I like the fact that they're giving Dom a little bit of a spotlight. I like the fact that Dom is getting Styles' first one-on-one match after recovering from an injury. It seems like he's the guy that they just tap on the shoulder and say, hey, go out there and do your best, because you're going to be the safest for people to wrestle. He did it with CM Punk when Punk came back to WWE. He's now doing it with AJ Styles. And whenever that initially was set up, my first thought was, maybe there's a way that we get to Styles versus Balor at Mania. That would be great. That'd be phenomenal. Two former Bullet Club leaders going head-to-head at WrestleMania. That would certainly be entertaining. But then we had the face-off with Bron Breakker. Breakker wearing a cowboy hat because, of course, they're in Nashville, Tennessee. But those two face-to-face backstage, and they just left the camera on them for 3, 4, 5, nearly 10 seconds. And you had to know at that moment, this is something that they are thinking of for WrestleMania. And I, for one, would absolutely love it. Bron Breakker's title reign, it's slowed down a little bit. He had a couple of great matches. Honestly, every time he's in the ring, he has a great match, but he's not been utilized all that much in 2025 so far. He's not been utilized since Raw went on to Netflix. He was great against Sheamus. They had a fantastic match on Saturday night's main event, but they haven't really utilized him all that much. Before that, it was Sheamus and Kaiser. Before that, it was Kaiser. So he was locked in with one or two opponents, and it didn't seem like anybody else was going after the Intercontinental title. But if this is where we go next, that's going to make up for all of the lost time. It's not like Breakker's been off of TV. It's not like Breakker hasn't had some good spots. He was great in the Royal Rumble. Everybody's going to point to the ISHO Speed spot where he absolutely destroyed ISHO Speed. That's the one that went viral. That's the one that everybody's talking about. But let's not forget, he was also given a huge spot against Roman Reigns. It was spear versus spear, and Bron Breakker won. Now, Roman eventually eliminated Breakker, but they gave Breakker that spot. They gave Breakker that opportunity to cut the face of the organization, the face of the company in half with his spear. This is going to reignite Bron Breakker's reign. And a lot of people, when he got the title, said that this is going to be another Gunther-level Intercontinental reign. It hasn't been up to this point. He does have a little bit of longevity. He does have a couple of great matches. The triple threat with Kaiser and Sheamus was very entertaining at Survivor Series. The matchup against Sheamus was really good at Saturday night's main event. Every time he's in the ring, it's good. But you need some A-level feuds. And Breakker versus AJ Styles, in my opinion, would be an A-level feud. Between that and the spots he got at the Rumble, he could have a tremendous amount of momentum going into and then eventually coming out of WrestleMania, because I don't think AJ would win, which is unfortunate. I'm a huge AJ fan. He is my favorite wrestler in WWE and AEW. It doesn't matter. He is my favorite wrestler no matter what. But it doesn't feel like he's going to win if this is the matchup. He might put on a great show. He might put on a great performance, but he's going to put over the younger talent. That's what AJ Styles has been doing for a very long time, at least the last couple of years of his WWE run here. The last singles victory that AJ has at Mania was Mania 35, 6 years ago, and he took out Randy Orton. He's lost to Edge. He's lost to LA Knight, and I'm mistaken, but there's another loss that he has on his record there. He has a tag title win on Mania with Omos against the New Day, but all in all, he's 3-4 at Mania. He's not going to go over Bron Breakker, but the story to get there and the in-ring work that we would see in that match in Las Vegas would be tremendous. So they teased it, and I'm hoping this is one that they follow through with, because AJ versus Bron Breakker would be probably my underdog match to steal WrestleMania weekend in Las Vegas. Let's close out this show with a top 5, because we're going to start doing top 5s a little bit more often around here, because who doesn't like a nice top 5? Today, it's going to be, who are the top 5 heels in pro wrestling today? I got 5 plus an honorable mention here. So 6 names that we want to get to for the top 5 heels in pro wrestling today. Starting at number 5. This guy could easily be higher on this list. This guy could be completely off the list, depending on who you ask. But I think Drew McIntyre deserves some credit here. This has been the best run, in my opinion, of his career. And the only title that he's held was for 5 minutes and some odd seconds at WrestleMania 40. He is almost an anti-hero thing going right now where he believes he's right. And for the most part, he is right. In the build up to WrestleMania 40, he kept telling Seth Rollins, you need to worry about me. You need to not worry about The Rock. You need to not worry about Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes and his story. You need to focus on me, only to fall into the same trap with CM Punk. The storytelling those two put on last year was great. It was one of the feuds of the year, but Drew was the heel, and he continues to be the heel. The next iteration of that was he's going after everybody from the bloodline. Jimmy Uso, Jey Uso, Roman Reigns, and now his attention seems to have shifted a little bit more. I'm a little worried about where he goes at Mania because it seemed like they were going to run something with him in the bloodline, considering the way that he was going after them week in and week out from the Raw on Netflix debut through the Rumble. But there is growing interest in him versus LA Knight. And I think LA Knight is somebody who needs to go up against a true heel. And I think this is where Drew McIntyre can go from the anti-hero to the full-on heel, because everybody likes LA Knight. I talked about it last week. It feels like he's lost some momentum. This is the type of feud that gets LA Knight back on track going into WrestleMania. We didn't know what they had for him, and it might have been something as inconsequential as a messed up and a botched spot in the Royal Rumble, but it might have created a really good feud going into Mania that's going to help LA Knight and that's going to cement Drew McIntyre for the heel that he has been trying to be over the last 2 years. I think he's one of the best in the business right now. He certainly is utilizing social media in a way that a lot of wrestlers aren't. He's usually utilizing really everything at his disposal. He's doing some of the best mic work that we've seen in his entire career. He isn't getting the reactions that you'd want from a true blue heel, but he's doing a really good job. And I think because of that, to me, he's one of the top heels in the business right now. I put him at number 5. At number 4, a lot of people aren't going to like this, but Logan Paul. The dude is hated for so many reasons. And at the end of the day, if you're a heel in this business, your goal is to be hated. He was hated the second he walked into WWE, so he's just built on that so well. And I understand people are going to say, well, it's cheap heat. It's just heat because people just hate him as a human. Good. Some people have to work to be hated as human beings in this industry. He is just hated, and he plays into it so well. He debuted that new finisher on Monday. I'm not quite sure how well he's going to be able to do that against people that aren't 5'7" like Rey Mysterio, but it looked really cool. It's much cooler than just doing big shows, big punch, right? His titanium reinforced wrist being able to knock people out. That's not a great finisher, especially for somebody that has the athletic ability of Logan Paul. So he gets a new finisher. It looks crazy. And he's somebody who, no matter where they're at, no matter who he's in the ring with, he is the most hated person in WWE, bar none. The question becomes, I'll get to that in a minute. Number 3, the first time I'm going to mention AEW in 4 weeks on the show. I promise you, I do watch AEW, just hasn't been much to talk about. Well, there's going to be a lot to talk about when you're talking about some of the top heels, because I think they have 2 of the top 3 heels in wrestling right now. Starting at number 3, Ricochet. If you're a WWE fan and you're not paying attention to what Ricochet is doing in AEW, you're missing out. Because you might think, well, Ricochet wasn't all that great in WWE. He's a tremendous in-ring talent, but he's not great on the mic. He doesn't have much good character work, and he's just flat out not interesting unless he's wrestling. All of that has changed. He's changed the narrative on that tenfold since joining AEW. He's been doing great work, and it's all on that forgotten hero angle that they talked about last week leading into his match with Swerve Strickland. Him saying, I came back to AEW, or I came into AEW, and people looked up to me like a superhero. And all of a sudden, he got forgotten about. He was just another face. He was just another good guy in a company full of some of the biggest names who are good guys in the sport. Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, names like that. So Ricochet felt like he was disrespected, felt like he should have been the hero of everybody's story, and gets forgotten about. And I think the way that they've been able to utilize that to push his new character forward has been great. All the bald chants are absolutely hilarious, and he's playing into it really well. Getting toilet paper thrown at him at Hammerstein Ballroom, that entire match was great. The Continental Classic performances that he had was great. Bringing in now the scissors in his rivalry and his feud with Swerve Strickland, and then his new finisher as well, sensing a little bit of a theme here, is very, very good for his new heel persona. Because, yeah, he does all the high-flying stuff, and he does it at some of the best and the highest levels of anybody in wrestling. But having a finisher that is just elbowing somebody in their face, that, to me, has just been the cherry on top to this new addition of Ricochet, and he's doing some of the best work that I've seen him do in a very long time, and honestly, probably better work than he was able to do in WWE in his entire 6-7 year stint with that company. So I love what he's doing, and when you talk about people who have benefited from going through the forbidden door from WWE to AEW, right now, it's hard to imagine anybody has benefited more than Ricochet. At number 2, in my opinion, the top heel in WWE right now, from Bad Blood to present day, it's Kevin Owens. Insane ladder match with Cody Rhodes, where he displayed that he's willing to go to any length to take out somebody that has crossed him in Cody Rhodes. Now, Rhodes went a little bit further, and he pushed the babyface, the quarterback of WWE, further than anybody has pushed him in his WWE title reign until this moment. The character work that Owens has been able to do, the way that he's been able to kind of play the psychopath in this role, where he thinks that everything he's saying is right. And while, yeah, there's some truth to it, he's taking it to another level. The paranoia that he has, saying that everybody's against him, saying that he's the right one, that he is the one that is seeing clearly, and everybody else is clouded. Everybody else is turning their backs on him. That has been very good. Not to mention the fact that the entire heel turn has been predicated on one move. And I understand this is a big topic of conversation for people that are tribalistic between the two companies. But the pile driver, the way that he's been able to build that move, and he's only used it, 4 times since he started this entire story? He used it on Randy Orton, who is still off of TV because of it. He used it on Cody Rhodes at Saturday night's main event 3 times. And he used it on Sami Zayn on Monday Night Raw last week. The way that he's been able to build that up as a, hey, when you've crossed me, this is it. I'm going to put you on the shelf utilizing this move. That, to me, selling that, and the way that they've been able to build him as a heel as quickly as they have, because Bad Blood wasn't at the beginning of last year. That was late last year, and he has turned into the biggest heel in the company no matter what. I think that has just been so much fun to watch, and he is certainly one of the top heels in wrestling, and definitely, in my opinion, the top heel in WWE. And at number 1, I mentioned there's 2 guys from AEW. To me, nobody has done better work on that side of the pendulum than Hangman Adam Page. He has been booked, and I don't have words to describe this enough, but he has been booked like an absolute monster. The guy burnt down Swerve Strickland's childhood home, or at least in story, burnt down Swerve Strickland's childhood home while sitting on a recliner and drinking a glass of whiskey. And then he started to put it on his intro video. The guy is a menace. The guy is one of the best workers in the industry right now. And then he continues to build off of that by looking as psychotic as he does in ring, and then going after some historic names. Goes after Christopher Daniels, ends Christopher Daniels' in-ring career. And now the sky's the limit for Hangman Page. The only problem with his run right now is that a heel is currently holding the AEW World Championship, because his momentum should be carrying him to the top spot in the company. And he is one of the top names in the company, but it should be carrying him into a title feud. He got in there a little bit when it was him and Jay White and Orange Cassidy, and they were going after Jon Moxley, but it feels like he deserves an individual solos title run at Jon Moxley and the Death Riders. He has been one of the best heels of the last 2 years in professional wrestling. Some of the matches that he's had, the Texas death matches that he's had with Swerve, with Christopher Daniels, have been absolutely phenomenal. The guy is a top heel. He knows how to do this and how to do this at a high level. And because of that, to me, he is the number one heel in pro wrestling today. So that's my top 5. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the graphic pulled up. It's Drew McIntyre at number 5, Logan Paul at number 4, the newest version of Ricochet at number 3, KO Kevin Owens at number 2, and Hangman Adam Page as the top heel in all of pro wrestling, which when you look at number 1 and number 3 on that list, you have to give credit to Swerve Strickland. You just do, because getting the best out of your opponent is sometimes the best way to build characters, to build storylines in this industry. Swerve Strickland has now gotten the best out of 2 of these guys. He's gotten the best out of Hangman Adam Page. Everybody loves anytime those two get into a ring, or at least in the vicinity of each other. And now Swerve and Ricochet. It's been one of the best feuds of 2025 so far, and it's building Ricochet's heel persona tenfold. Now, I understand Swerve's not a typical babyface. He just isn't. But he's as over as anyone in AEW, and the fact that he's been able to build heels through his feuds with them, you have to give a lot of credit to Swerve Strickland. Now, I mentioned I have an honorable mention, and I do, because I really like this guy, and I talked about him on my last top 5, which was top 5 wrestlers who deserve a push in WWE in 2025. Honorable mention, Dirty Dom Mysterio. Does anybody like this guy? I mean, outside of Peter Rosenberg, does anybody like this guy? I talked about Logan Paul, and every building he walks into, he gets booed out of the ring. Dominic Mysterio is too. The only difference is Dom isn't doing anything. Dom has effortless heat, and you have to give credit there, because he did so much in 2023 when he was extremely active. He did so much in 2024 where in ring he wasn't active, but storytelling wise, he was on every single episode of Monday Night Raw. And now it feels like he hasn't done very much at all over the last couple of months. And yet when he goes out there to confront AJ Styles, he can barely get a word in because the Nashville, Tennessee crowd is booing him out of the building. Effortless heat. You have to give him credit where credit is due. And I put him in the top 5, but 1, I think my top 5 is a pretty solid group. And 2, I don't think he's prominent enough in the ring right now for me to consider him a top 5 heel. I think because of the way that Drew McIntyre has been in a lot of different storylines in ring, the way that Logan Paul, who doesn't wrestle all that much, but is going to be in a prominent role in Elimination Chamber and then on WrestleMania, I think that's why those guys get the nod over Dominic Mysterio. But I can't talk about heels and not talk about Dirty Dom. So I think that he is an honorable mention to add on to this list of the top heels in pro wrestling today. Let me know in the comment section your top 5 when it comes to heels in pro wrestling today. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe at youtube.com/ and then at Nick Belsky. I got to work on getting that out of there, but you can find us on YouTube by simply searching Nick Belsky or Bell to Bell. And you can find us on Spotify by searching Bell to Bell. That's going to do it for this one. We'll see you guys next time.